to order. It is August the 4th. Mr. Barrick, you as the chair, if it's okay with you, we'll just kind of work down the agenda. Thank you, sir. Let me go ahead and take roll then. Stephen King.
Here.
Ricky Versailles.
Here.
Robert Campbell.
Here.
Alton Heathcote.
I'm right here.
And Rob Barrick. All right, Chair, we do have quorum, so we'll work our way down the meeting. You are recording, right? Okay, good. All right. The first thing we want to discuss, or that's on the agenda, we've got engineering technology. We also have reapplications. Mr. Versailles wanted to touch on Lamakia's application. So if it pleases the board and the chair allows, we'll do that after engineering technology. Would that be okay, Chair?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. All right, engineering technology. In preparation for the brief engineering technology discussion we're going to have today, as it pertains specifically to the first additional pathway that was created by the public chapter, which requires the following. I just want to read just a brief summary of that first additional pathway to sort of frame up the conversation a little bit. Graduation from a 4-year curriculum leading to a baccalaureate degree approved by the board and rules, completion of postgraduate coursework in engineering curriculum leading to a master's degree or higher in engineering approved by the board, passage of the examination on the fundamentals of engineering, passage of the examination on the principles and practice of engineering, and minimum 8 years experience. I wanted to reiterate that the statute was changed to create more flexibility for non-traditional applicants. And the forthcoming rules would necessarily, of course, complement this statute change. Since it was the aim of both the legislator and the administration to provide more flexibility, we'll want to make sure that we align accordingly with that. Obviously, there's some technical nuances that we'll work through today, and that's the purpose. But from a policy perspective, since we are still requiring test and experience, there would be little to no additional public safety achieved through the limiting of degrees, especially as it pertains to that 4-year degree. The board does have the authority to interpret this statute.
Can I interrupt you just a second? Let's go back. I want to discuss what you just said, make sure I understand it clearly. There's no risk to the public for the 4-year degree. Are you talking about the engineering technology degree?
Talking about that first pathway, the 4-year curriculum leading to a baccalaureate degree approved by the board and rules. And then additional to that additional pathway that was carved out by the legislator was a completion of a postgraduate coursework.
Correct.
In engineering curriculum leading to a master's degree.
With an undergraduate, the master's degree has to be obtained from a university that has an undergraduate degree that's EAC approved, ABET EAC approved.
That would be the pathway number 2. The first pathway was a 4-year curriculum leading to a baccalaureate degree and approved by the board and rules, completion of postgraduate coursework in engineering leading to a master's degree in engineering approved by the board, and then passage of both examinations and a minimum of 8 years experience.
Okay, you're talking about the master's path. Okay.
Yes, sir. So
not the ETAC path.
No, sir. So that's a separate path. There was 2 paths that were carved out. So the first path is the only thing I'm talking about right now in that regard.
But Glenn, this is Ricky. Just to make sure we're understanding the same thing, that first pathway with the technology degree includes a provision that a master's degree it has been attained as well as the 4-year degree.
Correct. Yes, sir. That's a good distinction.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we're on the same page. We're pulling the sled in the same direction. So yeah, good clarifications. But so this conversation, just at least at this point, is limited to that first additional pathway.
Master's pathway.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so in that regard, as we're discussing that piece, I suspect that as just at first reading of that pathway, there doesn't appear to be much ambiguity there. It's saying a 4-year degree. And as a matter of practical consideration, if it's an additional pathway, it would need to function as such as well. If it begins to look more like an old pathway, then that would be missing the point. So That being said, just on that point, that one additional pathway, the one with the master's degree, which we're talking about, I will defer to Stu at this point. But unless you had some particulars regarding the additional pathways that the board would be pleased to discuss, but I just wanted to caveat that before we begin.
I think what we have looked at or considered in the past as an approved undergraduate degree would be something in high-level math or high-level science. I mean, it can't be music appreciation, or no offense to anybody that has a music appreciation degree, but it has to be something that would be germane or critical to the understanding of the practice of engineering, or a foundational component of the practice of engineering.
This is the master's pathway that you're...
The master's pathway, right.
So if they have a master's pass both tests and have 8 years experience, we still want to look at that 4-year degree, is what the board is saying.
That's what we modeled. We modeled this after Louisiana. And Louisiana's got like a chart that says if you've got these type of degrees and these type of masters, then everything's good. That was the original. Because like Alton said, you can have a master's in whatever, structural engineering, when your undergraduate to be in music appreciation. And there's some gaps there. Because see, the original intent is to cure the gaps in the master's degree. The master's degree in of itself has got some potential gaps because, several things. One, it's a more focused degree. Number two, there is a fear, and I think it's not just a fear, I think it's a reality, that to get into a master's program may not require the student to cure all the undergraduate deficiencies. So there was that chart was kind of what we were trying to use, or something that we had developed ourselves, and I don't think we've gotten far. I mean, and we can evaluate this transcript, I'm assuming, to see if it meets those intents of that. I can't read it; it's in black, so that's what I was trying to get back here.
Mr. Campbell, we can also send it to you electronically if you have a personal device, but it was last minute, so we had to print that.
No worries. I'm just saying that was the intent, is to say if you had certain undergraduate degrees and they were matched up with certain master's degrees, then those deficiencies were cured, and that let us have some flexibility. Now we can match up others. It's not an exhaustive list, but it was an example list. And I think we would be good to kind of take these as a case by case and look through that transcript to see if some of those things are cured. And that was the reason we kind of went down that path to begin with, and that was the background of that path.
Lynn, I may get this wrong, and if I do, I apologize. 0120-01-10, doesn't it sort of list things that are satisfactory for engineering, like experience? And then could we do something similar to that for the undergraduate degrees, for somebody that's pursuing licensure with not an engineering undergraduate degree, but an engineering master's? And it's for sort of proof or guideline for what would be acceptable to pursue that path. We don't have to have it as a law or a rule. Wanda Phillips had created a template for us to review before that was a really handy document to determine progressive experience, what constituted progressive experience. If we could do that just as a tool.
The board is, of course, that would be the prerogative of the board if they want to do that. So certainly you could pursue that. I would just caution, though, that we want to make sure that we would have to have a compelling, reason, a public interest reason, if to limit that 4-year degree. And I know Mr. Campbell did express some of what that justification would be. However, with the master's degree in engineering and with the 2 tests and 8 years experience, it may be difficult that those perceived deficiencies in that 4-year degree wouldn't have been cured by then. But of course, we'll have to make that justification should we do that or go down that particular path.
Just to be clear, the master's path you would only need 4 years of experience. The technology path needs a master's and 8 years.
Correct.
But one thing that I will say is there has definitely been a move by our legal advisors and staff to take these guidelines we've been using and turn them into rules, like we did with the progressive experience memo that Alton refers to. All became actual rules a couple of years ago. Maria helped guide us through that, so that that's now in the rules. And I would think, assuming we can make the good case, Glenn, that you're talking about, that it's a public safety issue to have the undergraduate degree for the master's pathway, to have the undergraduate degree be of a certain caliber, that what we come up with, this chart that Robert refers to from Louisiana, what in some form could become actually in the rules, where we have a little more flexibility to put more detail.
In that regard, since we don't have that chart in front of us, would this discussion be more profitable at the next meeting to have that chart? So then that way you'd have something to refer to.
I think this has come up for us already a few times, I recall, and generally the evaluation that we've all discussed is what was the undergraduate degree, and I think we've had a couple. One of them was in either chemistry or biology, and one of them was in some advanced mathematics that we thought probably would make a compelling argument that it built the foundational blocks necessary with the postgraduate degree for an engineering license.
I had asked, maybe as it appeared this law was kind of going down that path, that we possibly get somebody with a little bit more expertise in academia that understood what those different undergrad degrees really meant, and somebody in the engineering world, maybe Dr. Smith is that, help us flesh out our chart. And I had asked, because I said, this is going to come up pretty soon after this law is signed in, that we need to know kind of our matrix to be able to do this. And the reason for that, Glenn, is to stay consistent, so that we're going to have some flexibility, but we also need to say, if you've got this music appreciation degree, we don't see a real path for you other than going back to get a Bachelor of Science in Engineering or something similar to get your license, because I thought the law as passed had some acceptable undergraduate degree language in there as determined by the board.
It does.
Okay, and so we need to be the ones determining what that acceptable undergraduate degree or combination of degrees or pathway of degrees needs to be. Go ahead.
So I'll read it directly out of here. Subpart B, the board shall, in its discretion, set forth further criteria in rules specifying what constitutes an acceptable 4-year undergraduate curriculum.
That's something that not any fault of anybody here, but it's something that we've not done to date, and now we are having these things pop up in front of us that we're kind of having to make some on-the-fly judgments. And I look at this guy's thing, and I don't see anything that I go, wow, this is terrible. I mean, I think he would be fine, but the next person may have something that's a little bit more onerous. And are we now opening? I don't want to open the gate until we understand kind of where those rails need to be. And not that this applicant does that, but we need to understand because it does say in there that the board needs to adopt something, and we've not done that yet.
Set forth criteria.
Set forth criteria, yeah. That's my point.
As it pertains to this application, since this was added to the agenda, we, of course, at the last meeting, I recall we discussed that we would have to, in an effort not to delay the applications, we would take those on a case-by-case basis, much like what we're doing with this particular app today. And we would review those until the rules were added that would memorialize the will of the board. And we'll talk about the rules, obviously, in the full board meeting then. Would it please the board to discuss Lomacchia in particular then, since this seems like a good segue for that? Or was there more to discuss until we get the chart from Louisiana and a reference point? I don't know that we would have, unless there was something else that the commission or the committee had to add.
I think that would be a good resource for us. We may want to delete from it or add to it, but I think that'd be an excellent resource and a starting point.
Okay.
And in addition, I mean, I go back to the first point. I can't read his transcript, and again, it is what it is. But it's hard for me to make an evaluation because all of it's kind of mine's in black.
Yeah, we have one signature for approval, and then we're just lacking one signature. So Ricky Versailles, who is on the phone, as you're aware, was the other signature, and so he just wanted to discuss. He had some specifics that he wanted to bring to the board, and then get those resolved. So he'll have a path forward. Mr. Versailles, would you mind articulating what those are, so that to kind of help the board and steer them in that direction?
Yes. Thanks, Glenn. This is exactly what I thought we were going to be doing until we get this chart or the matrix or the rules to help us. We would just need to discuss these master's applicants case by case, and so this is the first one that's come in front of me. And so I wasn't going to just approve this without us discussing whether his the transcript. He's got he's got the master's in civil from Loyola Marymount University, and first of all, that the master's, I don't know that it got into the law, but I think we had always discussed that the master's degree needs to come from a school where the undergraduate degree, engineering degree, is EAC accredited, and I'm pretty sure Loyola Marymount's is. So when you look at the Bachelor's of Science degree, it is environmental sciences, and in looking at the curriculum, there is biology, there is physics, there is chemistry, there is math. It goes up to through algebra and trig and gets into calculus. I think there's one probably to the first calculus course that would be part of the three that a traditional BS engineering degree has. So anyway, there are a lot of elements. I mean, it's definitely not to pick on a music degree or a history degree or something. It is there is a lot of related courses to the traditional BS engineering degree, and so I was thinking that is probably the kind of base we were thinking of that would be approvable for the bachelor's base with the master's in engineering. I don't know if any of you can see the transcript, either agree or disagree.
The transcript's a little difficult to see on a printout just because it's dark. So but
I think the things I can see, it does have several calculus, biotechnology, molecular biology, several chemistry and other biology courses, more than one calculus course. I mean, it seems to contain a lot of the critical elements.
Mr. Versailles, did you first of all, does the committee have any objections at this point. There's nothing for us to vote on. It just needs a signature, and the remaining signature was Mr. Versailles. He was just wanting to have that discussion with the committee to see if there was any objections. So I guess we can start there. Were there any objections?
I have a comment. I don't know that I have an objection, and maybe I just misunderstood as we went through this process. And Stuart, you may remember, but I'm not positive you were at all those engineering committee meetings where we sort of hammered all this out. I know Maria was, but my understanding was that somewhere along the line we were advised that these where the new law in the Tennessee Code gave the board rulemaking responsibilities for this, that we would not allow these applicants until the rulemaking was done. Now, maybe that was just my misunderstanding, but that's what I thought. So it seems like we're headed toward moving forward on some of these that would probably meet the rule that we would eventually adopt, but we haven't gone through that process yet. Do you remember anything like that, Stuart, or were you there, or does anybody else
I
here
think that's
remember
what
that?
I think that's when this came up at the last committee meeting. I think we postponed it to this meeting, waiting for the rule of the law to pass.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall the previous meetings because Maria would have been here more than I would have. But the last meeting, I think we suggested that we're going to go by the statute because that trumps the rule at this point, and then we would try to make the rules as quickly as possible to line up with the new statute. But if applicants came in, we would wait till July 1st when it became in effect, and then we would apply it to the statute.
Was there any objections? And thank you for that comment, by the way. Appreciate that. Well, thank you for the clarification as well, Stuart. Versailles, did you had something?
That I was going to say, Steve, that's what I remember is that and it may have been maybe a year ago we may have pointed it in the direction you talked about, but I think in the last couple of meetings it says Stuart said that the law, the statute would trump the rules, and that would be enough. And we've been waiting for the signatures on July 1st to start using these new statutes. But I don't remember us saying that the applicants would need to be held up until the rules follow.
Any other comments?
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Campbell, did you have anything else on Lomacchia?
No, and that I don't know. I'm just again. I saw a little bit of a thing that Dr. Smith did, but I can't see the whole thing. And he seemed to indicate there was some deficiencies here. But I just think we should have done our homework a lot earlier than this to get everything in order. And we knew what our potential law said, and we didn't do it. So we need to put this on the agenda and get this done like quickly. And I thought I had asked for this several times, but it's not on there as far as going through this. And we presented that chart to this committee a couple times. So, I mean, I'm not in favor of going forward. I mean, but again, I don't have there's other people that have that signature that doesn't need mine, but I just don't see that we have all of our homework done to do that. So,
Vicki, you were the reviewer and asked for this to be put on the agenda. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I felt like what Robert just stated is true, that we said when we get the statute passed, we needed to develop this criteria for the undergraduate degree, and that we haven't done that yet. And I'm fine if this applicant is the thing that forces us to get that done before we approve the applicant. That that's a good way to get things done, and I don't, you know, it ought to be something doable over the next month or so to be able to have that criteria developed.
Are you referring to the
I mean,
rules?
I'm fine not being premature with approving the applicant when we hadn't really looked at the criteria of that chart yet.
When you speak of criteria, do you mean the rules, or are you talking about like a separate criteria? That criteria
I'm
becoming.
talking about I'm talking about this chart or matrix criteria that is criteria for what we find would be an acceptable undergraduate degree to be coupled with the master's degree.
I think,
That's
Glenn,
criteria.
what Ricky may be talking about is the information that Robert had from Louisiana or something akin to that had at least
Correct.
guidelines or acceptable components. Do you?
I can get it. It's not a problem.
And do we? It seems like the person that reviewed this application and brought it forward for consideration today is indicating what they'd like to do is at least get criteria, review criteria, and maybe set some things at the next engineering committee meeting, and then maybe act on this application. Is that, Ricky? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that sort of where you are?
Yes, I think that if we can develop this charter matrix between now and then, that would be the key, and something that we can approve. I don't know whether that would take a special meeting or not of our committee to look at the chart and approve it.
One thing I
next
can
meeting.
do to save us some time is blind copy the committee, so that way we're not in violation of any sort of sunshine laws, and then your responses will come just to me, and I can call, a chart or a general criteria, a draft, basically put a draft together, with me corresponding directly, separately, with each member, and then that would be our primer.
I think that could work.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's, unless the committee had anything else for the technology discussion or Lamaki, I think we're ready for reapplication. Was there something else that?
Just one quick thing. I think we owe him a response, and I think we need to let him know that we hope between now and the next committee meeting to have criteria established, and hopefully the ability to review his application at the next committee meeting. State that.
Excuse me, no, I think I just I don't perceive that process is going to be very well done in the next month.
Yeah, can I speak to that? You can spend months, years, hours creating a matrix and a spreadsheet, and you're not going to cover every possible permutation of undergraduate degree and graduate degree, and we're going to be left, even when we do all that, with some things that are going to require some judgment. You just can't nail them all.
I agree, but we're talking about somebody that goes and gets a master's in engineering from an accredited university post undergraduate degree.
Well,
I think that may be a differentiator.
I'm not good on all the history and everything. I think what I've witnessed in a year is that we have a different feeling if someone's applying comedy, someone I was here in 1990 with a guy with one of my employees that had a undergraduate degree from a non-A-bedded accredited institution, an engineering degree. Board told him to go get a master's degree, which he did, and then after years, master's degree, we decided we don't accept that anymore. And I came down here and pitched it, registered. So this has been going on in this, in this area, and I think it's what I'm trying to say is, no matter how we try to document it, there's going to be fuzzy in some of these things. That's what I'm saying is, if you look at an best judgment you can make, and I guess maybe the more stuff you got to refer to. But my fear is, and not having been here for a long time, is that we're not because of what we're doing. It's been going on for a long, long time. Probably not consistent. They felt about it. Followed all this. I'm maybe another way other than putting it off. Questions, which I'm afraid it won't.
So I don't know that I agree with you 100% that there's nothing that's going to be foolproof. But we do. The law specifically says criteria acceptable to the board, and I don't know what that is. And you just put it in you just put it in a very eloquent way.
Well, I don't know if it was eloquent.
Well, it was eloquent enough. But the board's opinion
it's
changes.
Subjective.
There you go. So I would like to have some criteria. Now, if it's a chart, if it's I just used the Louisiana thing because it had some subjectivity to it that we could go. But I don't think they said that was all the only things. But they said, here's
Basic
kind of what
things.
we're looking at, so that you don't come in here with we've picked on music appreciation degree and expect us to go, oh, well, that's great, you're going to go ahead and get licensed. And I think right now, we don't have a criteria acceptable to the board. And we open ourselves up then to just what you said is, this week we feel like that looks great. Next week we go, we're not sure. And the next board feels the same way. And if we don't address this now, we're going to be in the same situation you were in 1990, where boards change, opinions change, and we go on. And we've been talking about needing to change this and address this now for as while we wrote the law. As we were writing it and getting it addressed, and we've not done that. And I say we is everybody in the room.
I guess all I'm saying is 30.
Mr. Barrick,
What is holding one application after all the ones we do make us feel any better? Because it makes me feel this individual.
Mr. Barrick, I'll need you to speak. Sorry, I just speak in the mic so we can get that on tape. Sorry.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
There you go.
Okay. Do I need to say all that again? I'm not sure I can.
That's okay.
I'm just saying this, and I'm not sure if I'm the one that's signed off on this, but the guy's been registered in California for 7, 8, 9 years. He's a practicing engineer. He's gotten a master's degree. He's
That's both the FE and the PE.
Yeah, and he's done everything and more than some of the other ones we've signed off on since I've been on the board. So why do we hold this one? That's my question.
Plus, I'm looking at Dr. Smith's evaluation. He was 25 hours short in his undergraduate degree for the engineering curriculum, but then he went and got a master's degree, which should more than compensate for that 25 hours.
Did you, Mr. Versailles, did you have any comments upon hearing from the board or from the committee on that?
No, I mean, I'm listening. I'm right. Just hearing two different paths here. Go ahead and approving versus let's get our criteria in order first. So I'm listening.
I think we're making progress.
Yes, sir.
I will say that
32 years ago, we had the board back up on what they told somebody to do. So that we're way ahead of that game.
Mr. Versailles,
Rob,
you were saying?
I agree with Rob that this is always going to be subjective, but I will say, it's similar to us having to judge progressive experience, what's good and what's not. The rules that really came from a policy handout that then became put in the rules really help, even when they were just policies. They still helped us form that subjective opinion. It adds some objectivity to it to have some guidelines, and I think this is similar in that it's not going to eliminate our decision making. It's not going to eliminate judgment, but it will help us be more consistent. So I agree with us saying we need to develop this criteria, and I don't think it necessarily will. I don't think this will be has to be a long process. We developed these rules pretty quickly, actually, especially the technology rules. So I think we could get it done pretty quickly.
Of course, we weren't. Just to clarify, you weren't suggesting that we wait on the rules though to approve application. No. Okay, just wanted to make sure with that.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
No, I, even if it's a policy that we use as a board, that we develop as a policy, that we can use that, and then that can become the basis for rulemaking, like the last policy did on progressive experience. But we can still use it.
Mr. Versailles, since this application was before you and you were the remaining signature, do you have any other questions?
No, I don't. Well, I guess just hearing all the discussion, I think that we should try to develop this criteria before approving this applicant, but I don't think we should. I think the goal should be to approve the applicant, or at least assess the applicant by October, and try to have that happen. And again, that may take a special telephone Zoom kind of meeting like we had to develop these laws and rules to get that done, but I think that's doable.
All right. Then if it pleases the board, then we'll move on to reapplications then.
Do we have a board meeting? A retreat in October?
No, sir. It'll just be us. We'll have all of our committees, but they'll be on site.
Oh, that's what I mean. But is it an extra day? Is it an extra?
No, these will be the 2 days.
Okay. Well,
are the deans invited?
They are. Okay, so I think we're ready then for the next item, the reapplications. Just to sort of frame that one up, what we're asking, because we weren't getting a whole lot in the summary. Statute 62.2.307E states the following: any person wishing to renew a certificate later than 6 months after its expiration date shall reapply for certification. The board may, in its discretion, waive any further examination of the applicant and any further education and experience beyond that attained at the time of the applicant's original registration in this state. And so that statute applies to all professions: engineer, architect, landscape architect, interior design. So we'll bring it up in the full board, but just wanted to provide a primer so that this committee could at least look at it and kind of cogitate on that a little bit before we get into the board, since we had the benefit of this meeting. Basically, unless the applicant has an active out-of-state license and coming back to us through comedy, we are requesting that within 2 years after expiration, the applicant be required only to submit proof of 24 PDHs the 2 years immediately preceding application. And of course, and that also under the rule requires 13 of those being health, safety, and welfare issues. So basically, we're just saying we don't need all the stuff we got before. We don't need all the experience, all the education, as if we've never seen you before. And so, but the authority belongs to the board for that, but administratively, that just seemed to make sense to us. So we wanted to bring that before the board and ask for that.
I mean, Chair, I think that's what I've understood we've kind of been doing in the past is 2 years seems to be a pretty good time period. What do we do with people that are 5 years, 10 years? That
would be an application review.
Total reapplication. Okay. I'm good with the 2 year. I'm probably good with a longer term than 2 years. But if you go 5, I mean, there's some point out there where that becomes hard. But
yeah,
I don't know.
We're saying at least 2. But I mean, we would like, the target in my mind was 4 or 5, because that's 2 cycles, but something in there. But at least 2 that way, because that just makes sense. So folks are at times will allow things to expire and then come back to us. And we're saying outside of comedy, because basically it's a comedy application if they come back with an active license. We're talking about residents here in Tennessee.
So you're talking about someone that lets their license expire here but maintains an active license in another state.
That would be a different pass. We're talking about residents who got their application or got their PE here. They weren't comedy, outside of comedy, separate from comedy. In addition to comedy applicants for our residents that went through the entire application process, we just want, if they come back to reapply within the next 2 to 5 years, that they would just present their PDHs and just pick up where they left off, basically, because we wouldn't have to re-examine their experience and all their education, because we've already done that. We've already seen all that. We know that they're qualified. The board has already blessed that, and we're just saying, hey, you've let it expire, but you're trying to come back and work. That's fine, and just do your PDHs. We don't need to get bottlenecked on administrative items that we've already done and covered.
You're not caveating that by saying they have to designate that they were inactive or retired?
Nope. Not
for whatever reason.
If they just expire and they come back, if they're coming back as a reapplication, we're just talking about reapplications, not other designations.
And
those are separate.
The premise is that they haven't been practicing engineering during that.
Correct. That would be because then it's unlicensed activity.
Correct.
That's a different animal. Right. We're talking about reapplications only per the statute.
Yeah, I agree with Robert. I'm sure there are circumstances where somebody would do that, and I mean we have a methodology for doing that where they can put themselves on inactive status. If somebody were leaving the profession for whatever reason and they had the intent of coming back, I would think they would want to do either that or go to the retirement process.
And again, I think I would be okay with making it 5 years or something. I don't think you're going to lose with taking PDHs, which we know they're iffy on some level, but I think 5 years is probably, to me, would be okay. The thing that concerns me is we close at some point. We talked about the people that were kind of going in and out. They would be licensed and then they would let it.
You're talking about the privilege tax. There was a lot.
That's gone now.
Yeah.
But there have been people that are like they would try to go in and out. So that's kind of gone now, right?
That's rare now. That was more when the privilege tax was here. We'd see a bunch of inactive right before and then trying to come back. We're not seeing that.
Okay.
If we extended it to 4 or 5 years, would we still only request 2 years worth of PDHs?
The statute says, or was it the rule is 24 PHs 2 years immediate proceeding. So they would be current on their CE, And this, you think, again, these are folks that aren't practicing right? We know
Correct.
that's because if they are, that's a different animal.
But they're not stamping anything. They still may be practicing.
So,
They
Right.
can't- But they can't hold themselves out as a PE.
correct.
Your request is for 2 years.
It's at a minimum of 2 year. That would be the baseline.
For 2 cycles. I mean, I don't know. But that's just me. I'm trying to think of what the downside of that would be.
I don't see. It could be illness in the family. Called something else.
Okay, if we take 2 and make 4?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And one of the things I'm thinking of, the situation that I've got a young lady that does some stuff for me remotely, but she's, started a family and doing some things, and she's let her license go inactive. She still does a few things back and forth that we have, but
Doesn't seal anything.
no, and she's not, but somebody like that would not really be full-time in the workforce, but still doing a little bit of engineering. And I think you're going to see more and more of that. People that are doing 20 hours or whatever, and not really. But that's why I would go with 4.
So is everybody okay with Ricky? Are you hearing this?
Yeah.
Are you okay with 4?
I'm comfortable with the 4 years and the fact that we don't have to relook at all that stuff because they've already been approved. So that makes sense to me.
That worked. All right, we got it. That's good conversation. Thank you. And now you guys are the experts when we go for the full board now, since you got the primer. So there you go. All right. Is there anything else, Chair? Yeah. Chair, did you have anything else that you'd like to discuss? We've got about, at least on the full board meeting will start in 12 minutes. So unless there's.
Let the record show that we adjourned 12 minutes early.
There you go. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, sir. This meeting is called to order. This is the August 4th, 2022 meeting of the Architects and Engineers. Notice of the August 4th, 2022 meeting of the Board of Architectural and Engineering Examiners was posted to the Board of Architectural and Engineering Examiners website on December 2, 2021. The following agenda was posted July 27, 2022. For a roll, Ricky Versailles.
Here.
Rick Thompson.
Here.
Blair Parker. Brian Tibbs.
Here.
Melanie Doss.
Here.
Robert Campbell.
Here.
Frank Wagster.
Here.
Rob Barrett.
Here.
Alton Hithcote.
I'm here.
And Stephen King.
Here.
All right. All right, we have a quorum, Chair. Now for announcements, I had one just housekeeping announcement, and then of course I will defer to the board if there's additional announcements. But for the nominations committee meeting that will occur after the director's report, we will recess and then have that meeting. That should be relatively brief, so I don't think that'll create any disruption. But that was done intentionally so we don't allocate an entire hour and then potentially delay the full meeting. Sometimes it could go longer or shorter, but didn't want board members standing around waiting. So we're just going to do that in that manner. Going forward for those months when we have a one-day meeting, when those rarely occur, but that's today, they can occur. If we have a limited agenda and we have a one-day meeting, we'll just announce the full board meeting and recess immediately with the committees in succession, then reconvene, which may be more efficient and allow us to go directly into the board meeting without any gaps. So that might be one option to keep those things moving, so we don't have folks because once you announce a meeting, then you're stuck to that time, and you cannot open a meeting until that time. And so we don't want folks sort of standing around waiting on these arbitrary sort of time frames. So that's probably what we'll do on those days. That's one administrative fix we can implement, and that's probably where we'll go in that route. As done this month, I'll reach out to the chairpersons prior. Yes, sir.
I have one question on that. If you're a member of multiple committees, how do we handle that?
Then you would just it would just be like in succession. You would the first board meeting you would open, recess, and then the chairs would just remain in succession for each of those meetings.
We're not going to have concurrent board meetings. They'll be consecutive. I'm sorry, committee meetings.
That's correct.
Okay.
They're not concurrent. Good indication. Thank you for clarifying that. Those will be consecutive. Yeah, not concurrent. Yeah. Thank you, Alton. Appreciate that. All right, and then let's see. Of course, I'll reach out to the chairpersons prior to each of our meetings to see what committees need to meet, just as done this month as well. So that's all I had as far as announcements. Were there any other announcements that anyone from the board would have? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move on to the agenda. There was 2 items that I'd like to add to the agenda that sort of late arrivals, if the board will permit. One was the ASLA conference is 2000 or this year will be in San Francisco. That's the American Society of Landscape Architects. That's going to happen in November. So we could take that up in October, but while we're out here for CLARB, might as well just knock that out if the board's okay with that. So we'll add that to the agenda if that pleases the board. And then also the NCEES Association nomination as well. Received something from Sherry, of course, over at NCEES regarding one of their bylaws. So that's really brief, shouldn't take long, but want to introduce that as well since there's a time constraint on that. So if the board is good with that, I'll just need and of course, if there's any other additional edits you have, we could entertain those now. Did anyone have any edits in regards to the agenda?
Excuse me. I do have one I would like to add to the when we get into the annual meetings. We do have one travel date in CARB that may or may not have been covered previously that I would like to bring up at that time, if that's okay. Sure. Or I can do it whenever you think's appropriate.
If you'd like to, since we've got 2 if it's a conference, we could just add that to the 2 we already have on the agenda. Is that what you had in mind?
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
All right.
And I'm trying to get the exact date if I need it, but I do know it's in the first week of October. But
sure.
If we can just kind of put a placeholder in that'd be great.
Let's do that then. So what I'm hearing then is we've got the CLARB annual meeting under director's report. Then we'll have ASLA annual meeting right below that. And then we're going to put NCARB right below that at that point, if that
That's fine. Yeah,
okay.
I just wanted to make sure I got it in the slot. Thank you.
You bet. All right, so that's there. And then still under director's report, we've got NCEES associate nomination. And I'll expound on that when we get there. Is that if that pleases the board, then I'll just need a motion to that end. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Thompson.
We have a motion. Have a second. Got a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
There. That motion was Robert Campbell and Blair Parker. Is that who I got? Okay, that's good. That's fine. All right, June minutes. Blair was able to identify a typo. He used to be an English major, apparently, and so I'm glad he caught that. Good catch. He identified a typo at the top, so the correction will be applied there. The typo was telephonic meeting. Apparently, we were adding some extra digits there. So other than that, that's what I have to be corrected. Did anyone else have anything else?
You understand why Blair does that, right? Because when he's specifying, there is a difference between poison oak and oak when he's doing trees. So he needs to be very careful.
That was good, Robert. Thank you.
I needed you on a fishing trip I just took last week. Something was piling around the tree, and I was like, should I be standing here?
So Robert has been waiting for that. He's like, oh, this is perfect time. That's good.
Well, I hear that since I know you're the expert, if I get into that realm, I'll give you a call then. So, all right. Anything else? Any other edits to the minutes? All right, Chair, if you would. For the June minutes?
Yes. Has everyone had the opportunity to read the minutes for the previous meeting? Are there any modifications to those minutes?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye carries. We have an approval.
Right. Thank you, sir. professional society reports. I think Casey is the only one we have, but I think she's bringing some updates from some of the others as well. Casey?
Good morning. Excuse me. Casey Anderson with the engineers. I have, unfortunately, my three colleagues with the other groups are not able to be here today. I do have updates from them. From the landscape architects on behalf of Nathan, he wanted you all to know that they just finished their chapter elections for TNASLA. I'm sure I said that wrong. And they're thrilled with their new volunteer leaders. Pamela Selby from Knoxville is their new president. Cameron Yates from Memphis is their new president-elect. Nathan would also like to remind you that today is election day, and please make sure your vote counts. From AIA, Ashley Cates would like to mention that they next week will be at their first in-person meeting since 2019, so August 10th through 12th. AIA Tennessee's convention will be in Chattanooga, so some of you all are likely going. It'll be a great meeting. I know she's looking forward to it. We have a lot on the Tennessee. I did talk to Don Baltimore. He did not provide a report from the, but he did send his regrets. From the engineering side, we are gearing up for the Tennessee Engineers Conference, September 18th through 20th. Realistically, for most people, it is the 19th and 20th, but we start at breakfast that Monday I think we are going to kick things off with a presentation about the 2nd Avenue bombing, Christmas bombing, which should be really interesting. One thing I want to make sure that gets on your radar that you may or may not need to vote on later is we would love to invite you all, the engineers on this board, to perhaps think about speaking at the PE luncheon, which is Tuesday, September the 20th. We'll call it lunchtime. I'm not, I should know the exact time of that in the next few days, but I know that people would like an update on how the new licensure law affects the world, and either you all can decide to give that or I will, and they would probably rather hear it from you. So if you all can figure that out, that would be lovely, and who might be there, that would be helpful for me. We've got 7 education tracks in that conference, expecting probably close to 600 people, and should have a little over 50 in our exhibit hall. Lots of health, safety, welfare sort of apparati in there and things to look at. So,
hey, Casey,
yes.
Would you mind sending out like a meeting request or whatever, an invitation, however you want to do it, to the engineering
I would
committee?
be happy to, as long as I just didn't know if I needed permission to do so. I didn't want to assume that you all have the right to come speak.
Well, of course, we've done it in the past, and if we weren't allowed to do it then, shame on us, I guess.
The parameters would just be that you're speaking in your own capacity. So as long as that was clear, then you could do that. And of course, any emails among each other or from associations would have to be blind copied, so that doesn't become so it's not a meeting.
But yes. We wouldn't be speaking on our own behalf, I don't think. I think we'd be speaking on behalf of the board, because it would be giving updates on board initiatives, board, and we've done that in the past when we were getting ready to do the legislation. There were questions about what the differences were. I don't know. There's probably been a half a dozen other topics in the past that we've talked about decoupling at one time.
I do believe typically this board approves that.
I think the board has approved that in the past, Glenn.
And that is fine. In those instances, which is a separate issue, then those talking points just be approved by the board. So that's it. If there's not authority granted from the board, if that's not discussed, then you're on your own personal capacity, and then you have to articulate that, caveat that with a disclaimer. But to your point, and that is clear. If you're going as a representative of the board, then that just has to be approved. So yeah, there's no changes in that regard.
And typically, it's not. I mean, we're not freewheeling up there. We're just talking about what we've done in open forums. And that are on the minutes, and we're not giving our personal opinion on things. We're gathering information, as well as telling them maybe the discussions that we've had again, and all those have been on video and audio and all that, so it shouldn't be any surprise. But people just don't watch that and like to have the Reader's Digest version sometimes.
So yeah, and that if you're in official capacity, then we can put that on the agenda. Just Casey, if you'd let me know, and that'd be fine. Yeah.
Well, it's in September, so I'd love it if y'all could maybe approve that sometime today.
That being in,
I've got one quick thing, and this is, and I think I told you personally, but just make sure that publicly, I thought the partnering between ACEC and TDOT went extremely well. I mean, it was good to get that agency and then the people, all of us in the same room. They've had so much new staff, and there was some opportunity to talk. I had several people come up to me from TDOT and talk about, hey, I heard you got this new law in place or this new thing's coming. Tell me what that means. And again, that was just me personally, but it was a great opportunity to kind of go around and around on different things and catch up and get to know new people that you talk to every day on the phone or something, but don't get to meet. So I thought you all did a wonderful job on that.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It was great. We had about 450 people there for a 3-day partnering conference. It was TDOT and ACEC together, and there were about 180 from TDOT there. And then we had about a dozen from FHWA. I thought it was really good too. I appreciate that, Robert. The other things I want to make sure on your calendar, we've got the ACEC's got Engineering Excellence Awards Gala will be November the 2nd at the JW Marriott. Really excited that we've got 37 fantastic projects running the gamut this year. We've got some that are some federal projects, some state projects, some private projects, some city projects. Really good stuff. So excited about that. And you all will receive an invitation to that. Excuse me. And then we also, just on a save the date kind of thing, we will do again our Senior Principals Forum the first week of January, likely January the 5th, which is that Thursday. And it's been a great opportunity. We've, in the last couple of years, heard both from federal stuff. We've had a lot of people from the governor's administration come speak, as well as just some leadership and some of the changes that have affected how you lead young engineers in this sort of new paradigm. Many of our firms are going to having some of the same trials and tribulations that the state has had over time with AWS and how that changes the way that people work and function. So that's all I have, unless people have. Oh, and yesterday was PE Day around the nation. It was a day that we celebrate professional engineers, and always a super exciting time to celebrate. Lots of our employers had big celebrations and the like. So social media blitz, if you will. But if no one has questions, that's all I have, I believe.
September event then, since that sounds like an action item to me. Was there someone that indicated interest that would like to go or participate in that?
I think I'll be there probably anyway. So I mean, if anybody else will be, so I don't mind speaking if I need to. And I'd love to have Alton there because, I mean, he talks more eloquently than the rest of us.
He should have just stopped at talks more than anybody else, but I'll be on vacation that week.
This will be a vacation.
Well,
it's in Franklin.
I know. And it's close to home, and it's easy to get to, and I love doing it, and I apologize for not being able to be there.
So in that regard, then, we would, Chair, if you wouldn't mind just entertaining a motion to approve Robert Campbell to go or to speak at that event.
Just a quick
Could I motion for that?
Ricky.
Oh, there are more. Okay, my apologies. Ricky, you said you could go?
Yeah, I think
All
I
right.
can do that.
Who else?
Let's approve Rob to go, and if you can't, then that's okay.
Anyone else?
How many are we approving? Do we 3? So that's an open. We can pick any 3 names later. We're reserving 3 spots. Is that right? Okay. Do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve 3 attendees and a second.
Second.
Okay. Any other conversation? One question. Are you going, Robert?
I think, yeah, I'll be there.
Oh, well, maybe we should reconsider. I'm just kidding.
Here's the thing, Rick. I was getting ready to say you could even go if you want to, just kind of as our, it's what is the I'm not going to say, I shouldn't say that in public. So I'll shut up now. But you can go if you want to.
Don't make me ask for this motion to be withdrawn, please. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank y'all so much.
Right. Thank you, Casey.
Mr. Chairman, just I wanted to make sure that the AIA conference did bring up that it's August. It's next week. It's, what is there? Whatever the dates are from Wednesday till 10th August 10th through the 12th is the state AIA conference.
And it's located in Chattanooga. So we'd love to have everyone attend. I look forward to seeing you there. And you can come as well, Robert.
I try to stay away from Chattanooga, not because of you, Ray. The traffic there is, I thought Knoxville was bad.
It's almost as bad as Nashville now.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It is incredible. I'm going to be down there next week or something else. I may swing by.
Thank you.
Did we need to vote on the AIA conference, or is that already done? I wasn't here for that.
We don't have to vote. Just
okay,
gotcha.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned that because I'll be there for one day. I won't be able to attend the whole conference, but I'm gonna float in for the 11th, that Thursday, and I'll attend a couple of sessions there, and then I'll be there for the award ceremony. So I'm looking forward to seeing you folks there.
It's great. Okay.
Where's it at?
Chattanooga.
I know, but where in Chattanooga?
Oh.
It's a big place.
It's at the Weston, downtown Weston Hotel.
How close is that to the downtown Chattanooga Convention Center?
It's a block.
Yeah, I may try something.
Yeah.
Then I gotta go.
Yeah, and it's in a real cool part of the renovated area called the West Village now. So yeah, it's the old John Portman building that was the original Blue Cross Blue Shield office building. Pretty cool. So look forward to seeing you there.
And I'm sorry but I think I did get permission to go speak at the Tennessee. No, it's the it's power providers or something in Chattanooga that they're having their convention the same day. So I'm speaking in that. I think that was done a while back. So how far we would be from.
Right. Any other comments as it pertains to professional society reports? Okay. Hearing none, then I think we're ready for the director's report. The first one, the budget report, that'll just be informational only. Nothing for us to vote on. Of course, you're aware of that. But I didn't see anything outside the ordinary. Once I got a revised copy, it looked like it was tracking and trending with prior fiscal years. I looked at the expense report and nothing stood out to me that alarmed me. So without going into all of it, I will just say that right now we're tracking at it looks like about $287,000 in surplus. And of course, the deficit there for March, we know what that is. That's the grants that we expect that and count on that. So that's a part of that's worked into the budget. And then October 21, I looked at the expense reports there, and there was nothing there but a leave payout as it pertains to salary, but that was expected as well. So both expense items were expected. Other than that, I didn't see anything that alarmed me. Was there any particular questions about that? Again, it's informational only. I'll give you a moment. All right. Hearing none, then we'll move on to reapplications. If you came into the engineers committee meeting, you got some of that. But for those that didn't, and for those that would get the whole spiel, let me just frame that for you. This will apply to all professions: engineer, architect, landscape architect, interior design. And let me reference the statute and then the rule and then what we're asking. The statute is any person wishing, this is 62.2.307E, any person wishing to renew a certificate later than 6 months after its expiration date shall reapply for certification. the board may, in its discretion, waive any further examination of the applicant and any further education and experience beyond that obtained at the time of the applicant's original registration in the state. And then unless, and this is what we're asking, unless the applicant has an active out-of-state license and coming back to us through Comity, meaning those folks have an active state license. We're not talking about those. We're gonna approve those. That's basically a Comity application. So there's nothing new there. But so we're talking about Tennessee residents that got their license in Tennessee. So and with those folks, we are requesting that within 2 years or 4 years of after expiration, the applicant be required only to submit proof of 24 PDHs the 2 years immediately preceding the application. And per the rule, 13 of those would be health, safety, and welfare issues. So nothing new. We're just saying we're not gonna pretend like we've never seen you before. If you're within 4 years of expiration and you're wanting to reapply, this is somebody that hasn't worked. This is somebody that's not currently licensed. They've let it expire, and they're coming back within 4 years of that expiration date. They would just pick up where they left off and then provide the PDHs like anybody else would that was renewing, and then drive on. That's pretty common practice anyway, but because it says in the board's discretion, we don't have that authority as the staff, so I'm bringing that to the board. So it's not necessarily anything new. That's not a new thought, but I wanted to make sure that we button that up since that discretion belongs to the board. So I'll yield to the board in that regard for that discussion.
I would like to ask a question. I know we've been over this many times about doing our calendar year versus the rollover from license renewal. And refresh my memory, if you will. I believe that we, for the architects, we are requiring 12 hours HSW, and not the 13 out of the 24. And I believe that rollover is over with now. So of the 24 have to be HSW.
The specs won't change as far as renewal, and so I was quoting an engineer rules, but okay. But still, to your point, and thank you. That's an important clarification because we're talking about all professions. The PDHs or in this regard, and the specificity as it pertains to HSW would remain. So none of those things would change. So thank you. That is important clarification. Whatever the PDHs or and the clarification within that would remain just as a normal renewal preceding the 2 years preceding within that 4 years post expiration. This is reapplications. We're not talking about inactive or active. We're talking about reapplications.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And if the board is pleased to do that, obviously there may be more discussion, but if the board is pleased to do that, we'll just need a motion in that regard to grant administration to be able to do that on your behalf.
We have a motion from the floor.
So move. So move.
We have a motion. How about a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Conversation? No? All right. All in favor of the motion signify by aye. 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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. All right. Thank you, board. Now it looks like we're ready for our run here with the CLARB meeting, ASLA meeting, since that was added to the agenda, and then the NCWS Association nomination. So we've got the first two will be Mr. Parker. We've got the CLARB meeting in 2000, or both of these are the annual meeting for this year, CLARB, and the next one ASLA. So we'll take those. We can take them together if the board's pleased with that. So let's just do that. Unless there's any objection, we'll take the CLARB meeting. That one is in Omaha, Nebraska, September 21 through 23rd. And then the ASLA meeting, the American Society of Landscape Architects Conference, is in San Francisco, November 11th through 14th. And so if it pleases the board, we can entertain a motion to send Mr. Parker on our behalf. We have a motion from Mr. Tibbs, and then Chair, I'll allow you to finish.
Second.
We have a motion and a funny. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify the same. Ayes carried. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Our second, Mr. Waxer, I missed that second. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, Frank was second.
I gotcha. We got it. All right. NCWS Association nomination. In accordance with NCWS bylaws, as the member board administrator of our board, I have been designated to serve as an associate member of NCWS. As an associate member, per Section 3.021 of the NCWS bylaws, for those of you that have committed that to memory and rehearsed that daily, and only in the absence of a board member at the zone or annual meeting would I be permitted to provide representation on behalf of the board and have the privilege of the floor and be able to serve on the NCWS Standing Committee and Task Force should that become necessary. This is basically because their bylaws require that an MBA provide that safety net in case a board member is not present. But obviously that authority belongs to the board. Still, NCWS can't force a board to do something, but that is in their bylaws. So Sherry sent that out and asked that I be added to that or be nominated to serve as an associate in the absence of a board member only. We have a motion from Mr. Barrick and then Chair.
We have a motion. We have a second. Have a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. All right. You guys are really efficient this morning. It's you guys are driving on. All right, I like it. All right. So legal. Looks like we're ready for that portion.
Do we our conference already, the NCARB conference? Did we already get that approved? Or do we do that in the next one?
Were we going to follow?
Oh, we
that?
were. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. I made a note here and then just
That's
ignore
okay.
my note.
Yeah. We were so efficient that we were.
All right. So yes, we're ready for the NCARB. My apologies, please.
Okay. So we have one conference that we have not talked about previously was it's a board of directors meeting, committee chairs and board chairs meeting that occurs in Salt Lake City, first week of October. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact dates with me, and I don't think we had that on our list previously. And I wanted to bring that to the board's attention. We would like to get that approved. I'm not sure how many. Okay, it's sorry. Thank you. October 13th, and it's a 2-day meeting in Salt Lake City. So I'm not sure how many members they're requesting because it's board of directors, committee chairs, and board chairs. So we'll have to determine how many that members from our committee or our board would go. So.
What we could do then to just establish a couple primaries and one alternate, and then if there's room for all three, then all three go. But if there's only room for two, then we've already taken care of that. There's no more action required.
That gentleman.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Right.
That's fine. I don't think I would be going to that. And by the way, that's a every 2-year meeting. Typically, the MBEs and the chair.
That's why it fell off of our
Gotcha.
schedule. It's every other year, yeah. So that would be fine if we could get a motion to approve two primary members and one alternate to go to this meeting.
Be fine.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional conversation?
I've got a quick. This may be Robert making something up, but you all don't get funded. Is that correct? It comes out of our budget as a state.
NCARB, it's a traditional funding mechanism. NCARB will fund majority, and the state may be requested to fund one.
Okay.
So
Go
ahead.
Well, no, I mean I just wondered how that is from again, we've got 3 delegates that are funded right by NCWS. And again, have no problem with you going, and don't have any problem with this board funding you going if that's not the case. But I do hope that in the future that we won't just limit ourselves to funded delegates. That we have, if there's something that comes up that we have more than the funded delegates can attend, because again, I think these things are worthwhile, and I think us spending our budget on that is a good thing. And I would hope that we just would not be limited to just funded delegates. If there were more that needed to go or should go and to these different conferences throughout the year.
Oh, yeah.
Historically, we have been, the last 2 or 3 years, it's kind of been funded delegates only, and I was hoping that we would be able to open that up a little bit. So that's just why I asked the question.
It's a good comment, because in CARB, typically our meetings, we have board members, we have our executive director, we have legal, we have an invitation to several members, or not just the delegates on the board. It's a staff, especially for the annual meeting, and then we have 2 meetings. That we have a spring meeting basically and a summer meeting, and both of them are equally important. Where the summer meeting gets all the voting and all the regulations, and that it's really a very serious meeting in terms of voting and all that type of thing. But no, NCARB does invite the staff members, and we want the staff to be there. Our executive director and legal, but this particular one, it just came up. And if we want to amend that motion to allow a staff member possibly to attend, we'd be glad to do that.
I think part of the MBE will actually live it. So
yeah, which would be
if you wanted to.
Yeah.
I would love to, but my schedule is so jam packed right now that I wouldn't be able to slide that one in there. So,
and my apologies for it not bringing it to your attention quicker, but I only found out about it a month ago, since it's a rotating every other year thing, because they said you need to attend, and I went, well, I don't think we've approved this yet.
Right. I'm glad you guys brought it to our attention, and if you could send that to me as well, so we can start working on that travel authorization as well.
I will.
And to your point, Mr. Campbell, you are correct. Historically, that ebbs and flows. We've seen funded and unfunded over the course of this board and other boards, and so what I've done before in those cases is that ultimately that number and that decision lies with executive management, but I'll take what the board has indicated what their interest is, who they want to go, and then we can have that conversation. If that gets limited, down, if that gets kind of pared down, then in a blind copy with those that were selected by their peers on the board.
And again, I probably don't want to go too far, but I think it's definitely very worthwhile for you, the staff attorneys, the different people to go. I will point out that we had just been in our engineering committee talking about this legislation that has been passed, and those meetings with NCEES were integral to us coming up with what other states are doing, how they're handling a lot of this, that back and forth that we got to sit down across the table with several of them about what are you doing to this, what are you doing to that. And so we just passed a piece of legislation in Tennessee that had a lot of its roots at those very committee meetings as delegates, because we could sit down and talk to our peers face to face about that. So I just think, again, we don't need to undersell the importance of those. Sometimes, yeah, they end up being whatever, but in a lot of cases, you do find out some stuff that really does help this board, and I think helps the citizenry of Tennessee going forward with just things that we're able to improve on as a board and help how we serve people. So I just don't want us to be short-sighted in that and just say funded delegates only. And then again, I'm tickled to death you are able to send as many as you want, but I just want that to make sure that it's kind of something we champion going forward. Thank you. I'll shut up.
Thank you, Robert. It is, you are correct. It's very important for us to communicate on a national level. We have 54 jurisdictions, and as we all know, everybody has a little different rule and law, and for us to communicate and get something from that to bring back to our state to make our laws and rules better, then that's what we should be doing. So I agree 100%, but thank you for bringing that up.
Chair, did we have a vote on that? I can't recall.
We had a motion.
Motion and a second, then we had some discussion.
Okay.
So any additional discussion? None? All in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
All All right, thank you. Looks like we are ready for the nominations committee, so we'll have to do a brief recess then and allow the board to take a break. So, Chair, if you would, I think we're allowed. I think we can just do a recess without a motion. So I think that would be fine. Yeah.
Should we take a 15-minute recess? Would that be enough, or?
Well, I think so. Well, just to the completion of our nominations committee.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
So
So
whatever.
we'll-
Could I just, and we can say no, it's fine. But can we make a motion? Maybe we push this to after the legal report. Push the nominations committee after the legal report.
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
me,
I put it there primarily because I wasn't sure how the discussion was going to go with some of the other key pieces, and wanted us to trying to find a break point where folks could sort of breathe and relax. Well, there was no rest for the wicked though when it comes to the nominations committee. They were going to have to work through, but the rest of everybody else could sort of a breaking point. But it looks like we're good on that front. So
I can make a motion.
Sure.
I make a motion that we move the nominations committee to after the legal report.
Have a motion? Second?
Second.
All right. Motion second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
We have motion carries. Thank you.
legal report it is.
Okay. Number one on the legal reports, 2022-022301. This was a Texas architect that submitted some plans. The project itself was exempt. However, on the plans, the architect had the appellation of architect on it, and they were not registered at the time. They have now been granted registration in June. This was reviewed by Frank Waxter. Basically, because of using the appellation, the recommendation is authorize a civil penalty of $500 and also pass the law and rules exam.
I move that we accept the recommendation.
We have a motion for acceptance. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
One quick thing in discussion. Sorry. This came up, something happened one time, but I think we had this discussion as a board. I believe it was as a board that even though projects are exempt, if you're registered, we want you to stamp them and take. And I don't know where I got this question from recently, but it was a phone call that I got, I believe. Did I make that up? That we had this discussion about if you are registered, even though you're working on an exempt project, that we prefer that you stamp it. I'm almost positive I remember that at some point. I mean, it's been a couple of years ago now, but 3-4.
This is Ricky. I remember the same thing, Robert.
Okay. I remember that conversation. I know that it was a prefer to stamp. However, based on the law, they're not required to. Okay. But it was more of a prefer stamping.
But in this case, the person obviously put architect on the plan. So, I mean, they were saying that's who they were even. Okay, good. I didn't think I had made that up, but I thought that was something we said we needed to do, but I didn't know that. Okay. Shut up. Sorry.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 2, 2022-023271. The complainant is alleging that the respondent won't return calls, lack of communication delayed the project for 2 years, and is also alleging that the respondent refuses to release the CAD as he feels that they've paid for them. Respondent denies the allegations and claims that the complainant is really the cause of issues by doing work before approved by the state fire marshal's office. We didn't find any violations as to these allegations, and also the respondent submitted a copy of the contract which shows that the CAD files are a product of the respondent. So this was reviewed by Brian Tibbs, and like I said, no violations were found, so the recommendation is to close.
Have a motion?
Move to accept the recommendation.
Motion, second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 3, 2022-022121. The complainant is an architect, was alerted by a local city codes department that a set of plans was submitted for a permit. They claim that the respondent stamped the plans that were drafted by the complainant. The respondent states that he provided a stamped separate drawing and was not designed by the complainant, and also involved structural engineering. They further state that the homeowner purchased a set of plans for their house and provided them to respondent for structural engineering services. The respondent made notes, comments, modifications on the set of plans, making sure to stamp his notes and modifications only. And this was reviewed by board member Stephen King. No violations were found, so the recommendation is to close.
We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
Move to accept the recommendation.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any additional comments or conversation? None? All in favor of the motion signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 4, 2022-025-081. Complainant received a set of plans for a residential build that included a title block form from an architect that was registered in North Carolina and not in Tennessee. Complainant has now requested the plans to be sealed by a Tennessee licensed architect. The respondent is registered in North Carolina and not in Tennessee, but they own a separate entity that offers pre-drawn home plans online where customers can purchase these plans. When reviewed, it was determined that the set of plans advise on drawing sheets that they should be reviewed by local architect or engineer, local structural design requirements. The submitted plans are exempt, being under 5,000 square feet in one family dwelling, until the local building authority added the requirement that the plans be sealed by an architect registered in the state of Tennessee. The respondent's name being on the plans make no claims that the respondent is an architect licensed in Tennessee, and there appears to be no violations. This was reviewed by Frank Waxter, and the recommendation is to close.
Oh, can we get a motion on the recommendation? Have a motion and a
Thank
second?
you, Robert.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any conversation or questions for Frank? Nope. All in favor of the motion signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Number 5, 2022-024-761. Respondent self-reported that they've been practicing on expired license since September of 21. Respondent became aware of the error when he submitted his renewal application. They did admit to stamping 7 projects while the license was expired. They have renewed their registration since July, and this was reviewed by Alton Heathcote. The recommendation is to authorize a civil penalty of $3,500 for stamping 7 projects, which would be $500 a piece, and also to pass the laws and rules exam.
Make a motion to approve the recommendation of Alton.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any conversation? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 6, 2022-022-151. This is same thing where the respondent stamped a plan on a license that was expired in 2019. The respondent states that they were notified of the issue and did not take payment of the services rendered. This was reviewed by Brian Tibbs, and the recommendation is to authorize a civil penalty of $500 for stamping a plan while the license was expired.
Having a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. We have a
Second.
second. We have a motion and a second. Any conversation? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
And number 7 is a representation. It's 20200842001. This is where we have the respondent has a home inspection license, which is now expired since the end of May. There are no signs of actually this person going to renew. All the mailings and email communications come back. They've been returned. There's no contact with this person. The home inspector program decided to close and flag its complaint in case the respondent decides to renew the license. And so the recommendation here is to add this complaint number to that flag so that if that home inspector, if they try to renew their home inspection license, the complaint with that program and this complaint would have to be taken care of and resolved before they could get their license. So that's the recommendation, is to add close and flag.
Motion to accept the recommendation.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
That concludes the legal report.
Unless there's any other comments, we're ready for the red line rules. And these are to capture the decoupling and the definitions.
Yeah, so y'all know that the statute, the new statute has taken effect 1st of July, and so now we're trying to revise the rule so that it meets up with the new statute. We've provided a copy just for review. Like I said, this is draft, so if you have any questions or comments about these draft rules, we can make a note of it. I know y'all know the process, so it actually, I mean, I like to say that, I mean, we've been talking about definitions for years, and so it looks good on paper now. It's good to see it. So I guess I'm here just if you got any questions or if you got any comments or you want me to look at something, just let me know.
I have some comments about the interior design definition. I would like to know if it is possible to include additional information about the registration of interior designers as far as requirements. The other professions have examination requirements listed. Also, the process of applying, the application process for applying to be a registered interior designer. Just following up with further discussion of becoming a registered interior designer and the definition as it corresponds to the other professions. So I know that it's not a practice act, but just providing a little bit additional information further within the documentation.
So are you saying like not really in the definition, but further down?
Further down within, let's see. It would not be in clarifications to offering to practice. It would be applications. If we could elaborate on application to become a registered interior designer at that point. Education and experience requirements.
Yeah, I'll make a note of it.
Okay.
We may just have to get with you at some point, kind of go over what exactly we want to put in there, and then I can go from there. But
Melanie, I have a question. On the 5th page of this, item 8, it says a registered interior designer shall be defined as, et cetera, as required by TCA 62.2.101. Does that not do what you're asking?
It may, but at the same time, there is elaboration on applications for architect, landscape architect, engineer, and so forth. And so I'd like to include interior design as well. And then also, Stuart, at the end, renewal of registration, listing there, there's engineer, architect, landscape architect, including interior designer there, and what that registration fee. So I would just like to see interior designer included in discussion in the same way that the other professions are.
What page I'm trying to find what you're trying to change. I'm not following.
She's asking me for some. I'll speak into the microphone. Just me and Robert over here chatting.
I'm trying to find.
Where is
on
that?
what page are we? I was kind of trying to.
It's not. I don't think it's necessarily in here. I think it's in other sections of the laws and rules that Melanie's asking. That, like, for example, on the renewals or other things that are we specifically call things out for architects and engineers and landscape architects, but they're not similarly called out for interior designers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'll look into this. I want to take that recommendation, and of course, I mean, I'll have to look into it. But if there is some language in there, I'll let you know. If there's not, then I'll take it to the appropriate people.
Is there a time frame is this on some critical time frame?
Right now, it's as soon as possible.
Okay.
Let me ask you.
I've got a question. Stuart or Glenn, I'm probably missing something obvious, but my document doesn't have any red lines, and it looks like it reads like it has not been updated yet for the Masters in Technology alternate pathways. Am I missing something?
And let me ask. I'm gonna follow up. The copy I've got here doesn't have any red lines to it, so there's.
Right.
Correct.
I was confused on that too. So I don't know if we got the wrong copy or it's just not showing up or what.
The copy has been changed, so the copy would be, if everything was approved, that's what it would look like.
Well, for instance, on page 11, where it talks about education and experience requirements for engineer, it doesn't have any language in there about a master's degree or technology, and so it looks like it has not been changed yet. And so that's the first comment. The second comment is, I think it's really hard to do a good job of reviewing changed rules without a red line version that shows what's being struck and what's being added. And really only then can you get any, I think, good comments from us.
Stuart, quick question is, sometimes when you print these things, if you call it original, or you designate it as original under the review, it'll print exactly like this with no red line versions. But if you do the as marked, it would show all the red lines. Do you have that version?
I have a red line version. I just assumed that was included in the material, but if there's some way that we can get that to them before, I guess during the nominations committee, we can get that out. But
Yeah, we can just we can reconvene because we're gonna have to do that anyway for the committee reports. So let's just take it there, and then we'll see if we can get a red line for you printed out. How about that?
I have another question going back to Melanie's earlier question on the interior design part. You know, if it's as soon as possible, would we need full board approval for any modifications to the definitions before you were able to incorporate them in and submit them to whoever you're submitting them to? Because I would suspect we wouldn't be able to do that today.
we won't be able to do it today. I mean, right now we're just presenting the draft to see if there's any questions or comments or something so that we can look into that to see if we can include it or not. That's what we're doing today.
Okay, so would we take it up?
Eventually, we'll need approval to move on.
Would we plan on doing that at the October meeting then? Or do you need it before then?
I'm planning on October.
Okay. So we're going to have committee meetings in October, and maybe the interior design committee could look at that and structure the language and then present it to the full board for their review and approval in October. Does that meet your time schedule okay?
I think so. Yep.
Okay.
I suspect, though, those will be two different rulemaking hearings. Because this is a law now that needs to have a rule, right? I mean, this law's been passed.
Right.
It needs to have a rule corresponding to that law fairly soon after that law has been passed.
Right. That's
and if
why
we wait for edits, no offense, but if we wait for edits to the interior designer part, that could take us another 6 months to get those edits to where it's an acceptable thing. And then meanwhile, we got a law sitting out here that has no rules attached to it or no updated rules attached to it, right?
Right. That's why we're trying to get these rules up the chain as quickly as possible.
Okay. I don't mind you just emailing me a redline version. That'd be fine with me rather than having the hard copy printout. But I do need a redline version so we can see what's been changed and what's not been changed. Just having the documents not helpful.
And in the redline version, then, in a continuation of Robert's thoughts, you know, and look, Glenn, I'll ask you. I mean, maybe it needs to come. Maybe Melanie needs to take a first shot at edits, and then send that to you, and you send it to the interior design committee, and the interior design committee give their comments back to you. If once everything gets finalized, you give them to Stuart, and he puts that into the red line document. Is that the correct protocol for that?
You certainly can. There's no reason to have to wait till the committees or to the full board meeting to have those discussions. I prefer, to your point, I actually prefer to have the primer, have that worked out so we have something to work off of. And so, but it just, the only thing when we do that is that it has to be blind copied, and then that conversation's happening between me and the board member, and then I can cull all that together, provide a draft for you to look at, and then that becomes your primer discuss, and that way you're not,
The same in our responses. Our responses, if we have any, would go back to you, and then you disseminate it out to the other individuals.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah. I just have to direct traffic, but so long as it's coming to me, then we're okay.
Stuart, are you okay with that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm good. Fine.
And of course, since this will be his project, he's going to be collecting that information and then driving that one.
Yeah, and I'm, like I said, my goal is to have it ready to go October of 2022.
Yeah, I get that. I don't see any issue with that being okay, as long as whatever the various red line modifications are every board member is able to approve that or review it and at least feel like they're comfortable enough to approve it at the October meeting.
If we're going to have a very exhaustive sort of red line discussion anyway. I mean, we can do that. I can get the printouts, send those directly to you. I'm sorry you don't have that in front of you now, but doesn't sound like we would be able to really dig deep dive into it anyway until we get those comments back from. We don't have to rush that, but we can send that red line out after this meeting, and then you can correspond direct with me, October. That way that we're moving somewhere. Does that sound right? Will that work for you?
Reasonable plan.
Okay.
But I would like to say that it's about a decade getting this done. So the sooner, I mean, if we keep going back and redlining the red line and redlining the red line, we're never going to get this thing done. Your comments but please, everybody, look at it and let's wrap this thing up and get it done in October. I mean, it's, you know.
This should
enough's enough.
Don't they call it a NEAT program? No excuses after this.
I mean, we need a deadline, a cutoff deadline, so you can't go back and want to switch that. I'm trying to encourage everyone. If you get the red line, make your comments, and if not, then let's move on.
Live with it.
Live with it.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Those appreciate the parameters, and that gives us and like you said, we've already got the red line done with the definition. So the decoupling issue, which we could do on that same thread. With me, we could work that out so you have your primer as well for your committee meeting. All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking at it looks like I'm just looking at it, comparing it to the existing rules. I don't think in terms of and under education experience requirements for engineer in this version for the technology degree or decoupling or master's, other version that was intended to be sent. But it's odd that the version that was sent, 3 lines that have just been removed, I think unintentionally, in paragraph 1B under education and experience requirements for engineers. So anyway, I bring that might say you can take a look at that. And Pro-01-.10 1B. There are 3 lines that I know we've never talked about getting rid of that are somehow not showing up in this version that was sent. So anyway, just comments to try to speed up the process.
I know exactly what you're talking about. So
okay, great.
That will be sent out.
All right then. Looks like then we're ready for a recess then for the nominations committee. So we'll take a convene and then circle back for the committee reports, and then that should be bringing and
then we'll reconvene after the nomination committee gets their nominations ready. The nomination committee, Melanie Doss is the chair. Ben Bricktaw, who is no longer with us, is on the committee. Robert King. So just everybody else can take a break unless they want to sit around and listen.
We're here. President, Chairman, Secretary Treasurer, and we've done that because all these other committees, Melanie, have asked for volunteers and assigned. So I reckon we just need to figure. So who's the chairman next?
Well, the way just for this doesn't mean we have to continue.
Rotation was
it was EAO or AE, either interior, and in this particular instance, the public member was in that rotation. So if the rotation was working, was as that person rotated out of that role, the next the chair, for example, and that would keep that progression going. That's doing it. So.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure we called it to order so we did. Okay. All right. Okay. Go ahead. Carry on then.
So that's just for background. So, I'm not sure how you want to proceed with the order, but I was behind Ben. So depending on if you want to move that order up, and I would assume that role as chair, or about another option, then it's still open for discussion. But regardless, we would need to add at least one more, or possibly a couple more people to the rotation for officers. So that's kind of the thought process right now. And then, like you said, the chair would reappoint members, and we'd do that in October.
So here's what I kind of think. Put Melanie in Ben's place. However, this is your second year, right? Might be better to let after Rick vice chairman, then let's fill the third spot. Does that make sense? That gets us the other. I mean, that gets the other a little bit out of order. But you've been here a while and kind of know how to corral the horses a little bit better, maybe.
And I was thinking as rolling in an engineer into this that Rob would be a good. I think
put him at the third.
Yeah, put him in there because of the value he brings to that rotation.
Plus, from an appointments, he would be the only one that would be guaranteed to be here by the time that.
Yeah.
And
we never really let that be a major point, but it's a good point. Yeah, right. But so is that a recommendation?
I would say Rick chairman, vice chairman Melanie, and then Rob be the secretary. I think that's.
That a motion?
It's a motion, but
that is a motion.
Lesser of the two evils.
More words to say less or something.
Okay, that sounds good. Second.
I'll second.
Favor?
Aye.
Hey.
All right. Did you guys? I'm not here historically for how you divvy up the committee appointments. Do you do that a part of this nominations, or is that just for the three positions, the officers?
Typically, what happens in the next process is that the incoming chair or the chair will make the appointments to the committees, and we can. I think if you want to do that now, I think maybe it might be better just to eliminate Ben from the committees, and then in October, yes, strength of the committee might be who might want to change committees or stay on a committee, that kind of thing. So it gives the board the option to participate. So,
and you're exactly right. That's typically how that's done. It's like, does anybody wish to be on a certain committee? Does anybody want to, drop off or whatever? And then hopefully, we depend on where we have, if we have new board members that may come on between now and then or whatever, but that lets us kind of play that game a little bit.
Yeah, and that also gives us the option, if we get a new board member coming in, we can put them on all these committees they may not want to be on. Or we don't want to be on, excuse me. No, so would that be, you think that, Madam Chair?
So committee assignments will be updated in October.
I think that's great. Yeah.
I don't think we need a motion for that, do we? No. So. Okay. So sounds like we got a slate, and then we'll figure.
If you like, I think you're free to adjourn then.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Convene. Do we have our quorum here? Yes, we do. All right. We're back in business.
Right. The only thing we had remaining were the committee reports, and then, of course, new business and adjournment. So the engineering committee, I will defer to the chair.
Yes, sir. Engineering committee met this morning. We discussed pathways to licensure again. We looked at a application and decided to hold it until October, till a matrix was prepared regarding undergraduate degrees that do not qualify with a master's degree. And we accepted the proposal to extend the reapplication period to 4 years. And then we adjourn.
Thank you, sir. think we're ready for the next one then, which is the nominations committee.
Thank you, Rob. That was good.
Good?
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
See why he make a good chairman?
I'm liking this so far.
Hey, Chair, I think we're ready for the nominations committee then, Ms. Doss.
I'll recognize Melanie here as the chairman of the nominations committee, and she'll bring us up to speed on our meeting just now. Thank you.
Thank you. The nominations committee met just moments ago, and we have a proposed slate of officers to fill some vacancies and proceed for what we need to do for October. For chairman, we propose Rick Thompson. For vice chair, we propose myself, Melanie Doss, and for secretary, we propose Rob Barrick. In October, we will make committee assignments. Those will all be updated at that time with possibly a new member or two, and we'll address those in October.
Thank you. I don't think we have a vote today, do we, or do we need to?
Sure.
Okay. So, as Melanie said, we'll bring that up on the slate, or that slate up for election in October. And so anything you have to do moving forward before then on any of these committees, Ben will of course not be in any correspondence or copying on anything on that, since he's no longer a member of the board. So I wish him well. So thank you. Thank you, Mel.
I'd like to congratulate the nominations committee on presenting an excellent slate of officers.
Good, thank you.
All right.
One question: does Rick Versailles continue to be the chairman until the new group is elected?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Unless and until you get the thank you for your service letter from the governor's office, even though you're expired, you're not expired. You're still in service. You're permitted to function as a regular, full-serving board member until that period. He would be the chair until then. That's correct.
I know, Frank, last year, or I think each year, December has been the first meeting that the new chair has chaired. So I'm kind of prepared to chair the October meeting.
Very well. That makes sense too, since that's kind of the big board meeting. That'd be tough, for somebody just getting their wings to sort of just take off and run. Of course, you're doing a fantastic job, so you would do okay. But yeah, you're right. That makes more administrative sense. So, thank you for that clarification, Chair.
Ricky, this is Rick. Please be more than kind of prepared, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Very well. If we're okay, then, Chair, we'll move on to new business. Does that please the Chair and the board?
Please move on.
All right. New business. Do we have any new business? I do think we have one item. Ms. Doss.
Yes, thank you very much. There is a CIDQ annual conference, and CIDQ is Council for Interior Design Qualification, and they have an annual conference. This year it is in Los Angeles, and the dates are November the 11th through the 13th. I believe I'm correct in saying that CIDQ pays for one member. It's possible two. And typically it is the interior design representative to the board plus the director. And so, Glenn, that would be you. We do have the option as a board to recommend others to go. Architects, if we want to, if the interior design, members of the interior design committee, however we want to structure that, I'd like to take an opportunity to discuss that.
Very well then. The board, typically, as you know, and we had that discussion previously. Campbell brought up that point, and then the administrative way to approach that is the board votes on who they want to go, understanding that there may be a primary or secondary or an alternate. And then if it comes back and doesn't get approved by executive management, then we at least have already covered that, and we've got approvals in place, so we're not losing any time and have any delays in that regard. Obviously, Ms. Doss will be the primary. If there was an alternate or a secondary, should that be approved, then we can entertain that. To Ms. Doss's point.
I'd make a motion that we approve, obviously Melanie going, and then have an opening for a second person, whether it's Glenn or whoever, you all think could be going. And I know, we sometimes get to a point where we have conference overload too, where, you could go to a conference every other month probably, right? So we need to kind of be smart about how we do that, who can go to what. So, but I think we ought to at least, you're getting one funded, and then the second one that's non-funded or funded by the board. I think that would be acceptable to ask for that. That's my motion.
I second that motion.
And a second. Further discussion? No? Motion carries. Thank you.
Well, and then if there's anyone that has any interest as being the alternate, just reach out to me, since the board has approved an alternate. But Ms. Doss, of course, that was. I'm glad we got that wrapped up. This is sort of conference season, the annual conferences, as you can tell from today. They all sort of bottleneck right at that same period. So I'm glad we got that business done before our October meeting, because that'll be a pretty full meeting in itself historically. All right, very well. Covered a lot of ground today. We are, unless there's more new business, I believe we are free to adjourn, should there be such a motion. Yes, sir.
Frank wants to bring something up.
We recognize Mr.
Name's Frank Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
No, I think this has been brought up before, but the NCARB regional meeting is in Honolulu, Hawaii next March. And so we would like to we would like for it to be verified that we will be able to go. The NCARB will pay for us to go, and NDE. When we go on these trips, usually there's one or two that are state. I don't know 100% what that is right now, but anyway, there's always, when it's a place like Honolulu, then there's some questions raised sometimes, and I want to make sure that we're approved or to be able to go to this conference.
I'm listening. I'm making a note to make sure I capture that. But you're just looking for parameters as to what that. So we'll have something to discuss at our next meeting. That sounds good. Yeah. Okay.
I want to bring it up.
And if anyone says this, basically they could try to spread it out, and this is the one group that they always, so they're like, so happens to be there.
Well, and Hawaii happens to be one of our 50 states.
Right. It does.
It does. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. It may be the 50th, but it's one of our states.
Maybe a good opportunity to approve 7 or 8 additional alternates to go to this meeting.
Let's not get greedy here.
I'll put that footnote in my request as I send that. Well, maybe not. Okay. All right. So yeah. Very well. Is there any other new business?
Thank you, Frank.
Welcome, Rick.
I think then, unless there's any more comments or new business, I think we're free to entertain adjournment. So,
anything else? None? All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Oh, if you don't mind, sorry, I know I'm a little different than some of the other board members, but what I've been trying to do lately, and I should have articulated, I try to go ahead and get a motion for adjournment. I know, strictly speaking, under Robert's rules, you don't have to do that once you've approved the agenda, but I can be a little bit more finicky, only because we don't necessarily always adhere to Robert's rules, strictly speaking. Sometimes it can be somewhat of a hybrid. So I just get to ask that the board would humor me and allow for an adjournment or a motion
I
to
move
adjourn.
that.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
And a second.
A third, fourth, and fifth? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye. All right.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We are
Appreciate that.
adjourned.
Appreciate the indulgence. Thank you.